supper. All right, I call this meeting of the Madison Board of Selectmen to order on June 25th, 2018, 6:30 p.m. Please join me in saluting the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alright, before I turn this over to Mr. Curtis, I would like to welcome Mr. Savage to the Board of Selectmen. Alright, Mr. Curtis, so use the gavel.
Since this
We
is
elected board chairman.
the first meeting after town meeting, I will take nominations for chair of the board for the year.
Nominate Al Benziano for chairman of the board.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second to nominate Al Benziano as chair of the board. Are there any other nominations?
Move they cease.
Second.
So I'll take a vote on the motion to cease nominations first. All in favor? All right. Now the motion to nominate Al Benziano as chair of the board for this year. All in favor? All right. Congratulations, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much.
So you want to take nominations for
Get that
vice
back
chair?
now.
All right.
Yes, okay, we'll take vice chairman nominations.
Move Jack Duchamp.
I'll second that. Any other nominations?
Move they cease.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to cease nominations. All those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. We have a motion and a second to nominate Jack Duchamp as vice chairman. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Congratulations, Jack.
Thank you.
Let the record show all selectmen are present. Consent agenda warrants dated number 33, 5/21/18, number 34, 5/21/18, number 35, 6/11/18. Payroll registers number 21, 5/24/18, number 22, 5/31/18, number 23, 6/7/18, number 24, 6/14/18, and number 25, 6/21/18.
Move to accept. Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the payroll register and warrants as read. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Accept bids and approve quitclaim deeds for properties sold at auction at June 20th, 2018.
As most of the board knows, we sold 8 properties at auction last Wednesday. In order for the town clerk and treasurer to expedite the process, now she'd asked if you could approve the quitclaim deeds for these properties tonight. That would allow her to process all the paperwork, collect all the money and so forth, and then you will sign the quitclaim deeds after the paperwork has been processed.
Duchamp?
Can we do it in mass?
When you make the motion, you have to name all 8 properties. That way it goes into the minutes. You don't have to do them one at a time, but you can do it in one motion.
You want a motion to approve the issuance of quitclaim deeds and what we're looking for tonight? The acceptance of the bids?
The acceptance of the bids is assumed, but the quitclaim deed is really what we need a motion on.
And then when she does the paperwork,
You'll sign them anyhow.
so if we do our motion subject to the proper
Right.
payment,
Right.
then we don't have to bring them back, you just bring them to us and we sign.
You can come to town office and sign them after
Right,
that.
that work for you?
That will work, and we have some people who are kind of in a bit of a hurry.
All right.
They like the process this way.
We have a motion and a second for that. I'll read down through and I'll read down through.
Subject to her getting paid.
Yep.
The motion is to accept the bids and issue quitclaim deeds subject to proper payment to Kathy for the properties named.
Need a second? Okay. We have a motion and a second to award quitclaim deeds and accept the bid based upon payment, correct? Based upon payment. Okay, so we have account 1394 sold to Gary Anderson, account 375 sold to Peter Thompson, account 4 sold to Calvary Pentecostal Church, Account 908 sold to Richard Mahan. Account 565 sold to Rhonda Leet. Account 2994 sold to Patrick Rodden. Account 3083 sold to Chad Drury. And account 1300 to Savannah Warner. Any questions? Having a motion and a second, seeing no questions, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. All right, discuss acceptance of the meeting minutes of May 21st, 2018, and June 11th, 2018, which was the town meeting. We have a motion to accept.
Move to approve.
Second. Oh, thanks, Mr.
Well, I
Lyle.
wasn't there on the 21st, so,
We have a motion and a second to accept the meeting minutes of May 21st, 2018, and June 11th, 2018, which was the town meeting. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
I can get you to sign, that's the town meeting minutes.
All right, old business, Mr. Moody,
None for me, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Elias,
no.
Mr. Savage, I don't, you're not old yet. So. Mr. Duchamp,
None for me.
okay. Items of communication, Mr. Town Manager.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to start with communication items tonight because the animals ordinance that was amended at town meeting is not on the agenda because there's no action requested from, to put it on the agenda tonight. So I decided to put it under an article of or item of communication. I see some of you have the handouts. I tried to make several handouts and put them on that table out there in the foyer. Essentially, since town meeting, there's been quite a bit of discussion online and in the media regarding the changes to the town's animal ordinance, which was chapter 148, passed at town meeting on June 11th. I put together a one-page summary that really just kind of talks about the 3-year process that the town has gone through at the selectmen level to deal with property maintenance issues. And I won't bother to go through that, the information is fairly clear. I can certainly understand people's concerns when a municipality seems to be telling them what they can and can't do on their own property. This is not a zoning ordinance, and it's not a farm ordinance, it is a property maintenance ordinance. That was certainly the board's intent. And as such, it deals with situations that may arise that may cause a nuisance. So similar to our property maintenance ordinance, if your neighbor has a lot of garbage bags that have been sitting on his front lawn for a series of weeks, that's a violation of the town's property maintenance ordinance. If you have a dog that barks nonstop for more than a half hour, that's now a violation of the town's animals ordinance. And if the keeping of some animals on your property causes a nuisance to your neighbor, then your neighbor can come to the town and ask for some sort of enforcement of this as a property maintenance ordinance. So, as I was just going to inform the board tonight, I've been in contact with folks from the Maine Farm Bureau, and they have assured me that they would like to represent the concerns of the area farmers that might be impacted by this, and I would be glad to meet with the Farm Bureau and discuss any changes, amendments that would be needed to this ordinance that would be amenable to you, town meeting, and the residents of Madison. So if that's the way the board would like me to proceed, I will meet with the Farm Bureau and see what we can work out.
Does that sound good to the board?
Yep.
So, we'll proceed with that. Thank you.
And I know there are people here tonight, but this was not an agenda item, and it was not a item for discussion. We do have citizens' concerns at the end of the meeting, but this is the way that I wanted to present the information.
Right, that's, I mean, you're in contact with the lady from, the lady who's contacting you for the fire.
I do have her contact
I'm assuming that's,
information.
I'm assuming that's.
Yes, I'm the
you're
stranger in the
Jillian?
room.
Yeah, so, you'll be in contact with Tim and set up a meeting, and
Yes,
we
I'd
can
be happy.
go over what your thoughts are on making it better, I guess, how to put it.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Under other items of communication, the next assessors meeting has been scheduled for July 23rd at 5:30. That will give the Board of Assessors an opportunity to see where the valuation is headed before they actually commit taxes. The committing of taxes will be by the middle of August. That's our plan right now. The town office is proud to be working with a recent Madison graduate. Maddie Terrio is our summer intern. She'll be working a couple hours a week on projects that include recycling, recreational trails, and playgrounds. In your packet, you probably saw a ballot from the Maine Municipal Association. If the board is interested in selecting Elaine Allos and myself to return to the Legislative Policy Committee, I have a ballot here that you can sign, and assuming that you want those two candidates, I'll even go ahead and fill it out for you.
Those are the two.
So those are the two to choose from, right?
Okay, so we have Elaine Allos and Tim Curtis, who are being selected for the Maine Municipal Association's Legislative Policy Committee. So we get a motion and a second to vote for both of those?
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to vote for Elaine Allos and Tim Curtis for the Municipal Association's Legislative Policy Committee. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
Couple other items just to pass along to you. You should have all received the FOIA, Freedom of Information training packet. That needs to be signed every year. And you should have also received a disclosure packet from our ethics ordinance. And that information also needs to be filled out and signed and returned to Kathy as soon as possible. In your packet, I put a couple of letters from residents that I thought would be of interest to you. The first was from Alan Morales, who is the owner of the property across from the high school at 497 Main Street. And I thought his letter was worth sharing with the board, since he does share his appreciation to the board and to the town for their patience with him. And he does apologize for the fact that it took so long to fix that burned out building. But as you're aware, that burned out building is gone, and a little bit later on, we'll be talking about the fact that he has paid for that, or will be paying for that, so that the town will be reimbursed for tearing down that building. And also, there's an email that I shared from the owner of the property at 21 Naomi Avenue. And I just shared that with you so that you know that the process has begun to serve her with an eviction notice, the person that's been on his property with a camper for most of the winter and into the summer. And so that process has begun, and he wants her to be evicted and to be out of that property.
That's a change.
That is a change in his point of view, so I wanted to share that.
That's great.
Okay, that's all I have.
All right, new business, appointed positions. In your packet, there's a list of appointed positions. If you can get that filled in and give it to Tim.
Well, before that, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, before that, you do have to make a motion on these appointments for code enforcement, local plumbing, assessing, health officer, fire chief, emergency management, sexton, tree warden, tax collector, overseer of the pines, and auditor. You can approve that slate as one motion.
Okay, so we have for appointments, code enforcement officer for 1 year, Susan Hathaway, alternate Leo Mayo. Plumbing inspector for 1 year, Susan Hathaway, alternate Leo Mayo. Addressing officer for 1 year, Tim Curtis, alternate Tammy Carrier. Health officer, the current appointment expires June 2019, so we'll.
The health officer is a 3-year appointment,
Okay.
and so you would be.
Leo too?
You would be, yes,
Okay.
so you would be appointing these two folks to fill that
Okay.
until 19.
So Susan Hathaway in that position, alternate Leo Mayo. Fire chief, Don French. Emergency management, Tim Curtis. Sexton, Mike Ricker. Tree warden, Jeff Wright. Tax collector, Tim Curtis. Overseer of the Pines, Jim Elias. Auditor, R.H.R. Smith and Associates.
And those other three will do individually.
Okay. All right. Can I get a motion on those?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to accept the appointments as read. Any questions? Yes, Mr. Elias.
Addressing officer, E911?
That's correct.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
The next item is what's referred to as the 906. And this is something that needs to be renewed by the selectmen every year. This authorizes the treasurer and the tax collector to apply a payment to the oldest taxes first, chronologically. It's a practice that we do, but it needs to be approved every year.
All right, we're looking for a motion for the 906 application of payments to unpaid taxes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the application of payment to taxes, Title 906. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
The next item that needs your signature once a year is the treasurer's disbursement warrant. There are actually two of these. This one is for state fees. Again, this allows those payments to be dispersed in between meetings.
Okay, so we're looking. All right, we have a motion and a second on the policy of treasurer's disbursement warrant for state fees. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
The next one is the treasurer's disbursement warrant for employee wages and benefits, again, to be disposed weekly.
Move to sign.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the policy of treasurer's disbursement warrants for employees' wages and benefits. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor? All right, so now,
Now we're
already.
not ready to move on. You're on the policy regarding small amounts of uncollected property tax interest. This allows the treasurer to waive amounts of $1.50 or less. In the example, if someone pays their taxes by mail and doesn't know what their interest is, and they're $1.50 or less short, that saves it from going out as a tax lien notice.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion for the policy regarding small amounts of uncollected property tax interest. And I
Move to
believe-
sign.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to sign the policy regarding small amounts of uncollected property tax interest.
Question.
Yes, question, Mr. Duchamp.
Is this our normal practice? This is what we normally do?
This is what we've done for the last 3 years.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure I didn't miss something.
No, it's exactly the same as what we've done.
Seeing no questions, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
Now, Mr. Chairman, you're
Yes.
at the ballot portion. So each of you in your packet should have received a ballot for boards and committees such as the advisory budget board, the planning board, board of appeals, board of ethics, and the recreation committee. You'll notice on the first two, advisory and planning board, there are more people recommended than the actual number. So as you fill that out and turn that in, just make sure you check the appropriate number of boxes. This is done by ballot, and then once the majorities are tallied, those names are entered into the minutes. I just will note for information that we are in a significant transition with our recycling committee. We've had a number of resignations and people that decided they do not want to return. So there are 5 openings on the town's solid waste and recycling committee, and we don't have any recommendations for that. I'll continue to work on that and come back to the board with that information.
We should initial those when we finish them, I believe.
That's fine.
We should initial those when we finish.
Yeah, turn
pass them to the town manager.
You want them now?
Sure.
When you're ready.
Send them down.
Send them down if you got them.
Hell, no.
All right. We good on appointments? We're all set?
I think, there's a appointment, yes.
Okay.
George, you gonna send the other down?
I put it here with the rest of the pile coming down there.
Oh, okay.
We got a pile coming down.
All right. So people who don't usually come to meetings, we don't have quite this many motions and paperwork. This is the first meeting of the year, so after a town meeting, so we have quite a few today. All right, number 2, Freedom of Information Act, FOIA training.
This won't take long, Mr. Chairman. You have the information in front of you to read. Just need to make sure that you sign the appropriate paper and get it back to Kathy. I'll point out 2 things that are important about this Freedom of Information training. It is required for every elected official, and it's required to be done every year. The other thing that's important is in this training, it actually spells out what constitutes a public meeting. And I think that's important for all elected officials to know. So that's all I'll say. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them.
Any questions for the town manager? Okay. All right, number 3, proclamation of Corporal Eugene Cole Day.
At a previous meeting, the board indicated they would like to follow Norwich Walk's lead and make a proclamation that April 25th ongoing will be known as Corporal Eugene Cole Day. That is the day that he was shot and killed in the line of duty. So we have drafted a proclamation for the Board of Selectmen. And I have a signing copy if the board would like to do that for you. I can simply read it into the minutes. Whereas it is appropriate for us to remember the contributions and sacrifices made by the law enforcement community while protecting the public. And whereas Somerset County Sheriff's Office Corporal Eugene Cole served 13 loyal years for the department, protecting and serving the people of Somerset County. And whereas on April 25th, 2018, Corporal Eugene Cole was shot and killed in the line of duty. And whereas Corporal Eugene Cole was a graduate of Madison High School in 1974, lived for a time in Madison, Skowhegan, then Norwich Walk. And whereas Corporal Eugene Cole was a dedicated member of the community who gave up his own life to protect that community, he shall be remembered from this day forward for his service and sacrifice. This day shall be a day recognized in the town of Madison by performing good works, service to the community, and selfless acts. Now therefore, we, the Madison Board of Selectmen, on behalf of the town of Madison, do hereby proclaim April 25th of each year in perpetuity to be recognized as Corporal Eugene Cole Day.
I believe we have asked the school to have their community service day as close to that as we can get.
I did. I had
That
a-
sometimes is April vacation, but
I had a good conversation with the superintendent, and she said that even if the public service day doesn't fall on that day, they can recognize the Corporal Cole that day.
all right. All right, any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Oh, I probably got a motion first.
I was wondering.
Sorry, Mr. Elias.
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
So there's your signature.
Yep. Okay, number 4, discuss approval of salaries for town employees.
So the budgets approved by voters at town meeting included a 2% raise for both union and non-union employees of the town. So you have a handout there in your packet in front of you that outlines those recommended changes. We're also recommending a salary based on an hourly rate of $17.50 for code enforcement, but that's a salary capped at 20 hours a week. The road commissioner's salary is based on an hourly of $26.44 a week, and that is capped at 40 hours a week as salary. As the board may know, we have an opening in the road foreman in the highway department. Jeff and Tammy and myself have conducted 4 interviews, and we have at least one candidate we want to ask back for a second interview. So before that second interview, we would like the board to at least approve the range for that position, which is posted at $20.50 an hour up to $22 an hour, based on experience and so forth. So the only other thing I will note in there is under the library, part-time assistants and substitutes, the 2% increase will go into effect for the part-timers June 1st, and then an increase due to the increase in minimum wage will affect their pay starting January 1st, 2019. So if the board so chooses, they could approve this slate. If they have any questions, we'll be trying to answer.
Any questions, or actually need a motion first?
Well, I'll make a motion.
To approve all of them?
I would just have a question on, are you looking at a foreman internally first, or is this external?
We posted the job internally, and then we posted it in the newspaper and on Maine Municipal's site. And I'm pleased to say that 2 of the candidates of the 4 that we've interviewed are employees that work for them.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept all of the salary increases as read. We need a second?
Second.
All right, we
I
have a
didn't
motion.
make the motion.
We have a motion and a second to accept the salary increases as read by the town manager. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. All right, discuss recommended change to personnel policy, earning of sick days.
So if the board recalls, this was actually a recommendation that was made to us by outgoing road commissioner Glenn Nanter to see if the board would be willing to consider altering the personnel policy, and at the same time that would mean altering the union contract with the highway department in regards to sick days. Right now, the policy is that an employee who leaves the town in good standing would receive 25%, or the value of 25% of his sick days earned, up to 19 years of service. And if that individual, he or she, worked for the town for 20-plus years of service, they would receive 100% of their sick time earned. One of the questions I think this kind of brings before the board as a policy is, do you want to incentivize people to work through the end of their time once they resign or retire? Or do you want to encourage employees to take their sick time as they know their deadline is approaching, so that they get the full benefit of that? It leaves a burden on the other co-workers if they know that their co-worker is just going to take as much time off as they possibly can to earn 100% sick time if they haven't worked for the 20 years. So one of the suggestions that I bring to you after talking with some of the other staff is, would the board be willing to consider some sort of stair step where you would earn a certain percentage for 10 years, 15 years, instead of jumping from 0 all the way up to 20. So the board does not have to hash out all the details tonight. I'm just bringing it to the board to see if it's something that they're willing or interested in discussing.
So at this time, if somebody works 10 years, they have sick time left, they're gonna get 25% of that when they walk out the door.
Right. So
All right, so when you get to, okay.
So let's say if you've worked 10 years and you've accumulated, to make it easy with round figures, if you've accumulated $1,000 worth of sick time, you'll be paid out $250 if you don't use up that sick time before you leave. Or you say, I'm gonna resign on August 31st, then in July, you start taking 2 days of sick time every week so that you get your 100%. And that's been the practice, that's what we've experienced. And I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but it does put a burden on the other staff members.
Mr. Duchamp.
To my knowledge, it is only in,
I see you, Mr. Moody.
to my knowledge, it is only in government service that you get paid out for sick time. I've never worked for a private company that pays out for sick time when you leave, never have. And I recall when we were doing contract negotiations, I was adamant against it. This was a current policy is a compromise that we came to with with the union negotiators to try and get that done, get that contract done. That was back in 2014, I think. And we were in the process of doing the personnel policy at the same time, and we felt that it was important to make sure that there wasn't a real disparity between what the union contract employees were getting and what the persons who weren't covered by a union contract were getting. So that's why that language is mirrored from the union contract into the employee personnel policy. For me, guys, I was opposed to it then, and I'm opposed to it now. I think it's a burden that takes your sick time when you're, and the town manager asked me today, would you rather have them take it 3 days at a time before they leave? Sure. That's typically what's done. We've had, we have, 10 people retiring at the bank over the next 6 months, and every Friday they're off, or every Thursday, Friday they're off, because they've got time built up. I know we have caps on time, both at the bank and at the town, so there's a certain cap on how much of that you can save up. And I don't have any issue. I know Mr. Manta brought this to our attention. My concern would be is if we adjust the policy, do we look like we're taking care of Mr. Manta? And I got nothing against Mr. Manta. We have to be really careful about how these things come about. So that would be my thoughts on that.
Mr. Moody?
Has anybody entertained this with the union to get any feedback or challenges from them?
Jeff and I and Bill Pierce met with Rick Gilly, who's the union rep, last week, because we were dealing with the transition, because Jeff was the shop steward and now Bill Pierce is. So in that meeting, we brought this up for conversation, and all that Rick Gilly said was, if you do change something in the personnel policy, he'd like to see the language. The union members would have to vote on that language, whether or not they wanted to open up the contract to make it similar.
All right.
There was no really for or against talked about that.
Mr. Elias?
What does it say now?
It's right in here.
In that handout, it says,
This is what's in the contract right now?
this is what's in both the contract, number 9, and in the, well, I should say, without that bold print in the middle of it. If you take that bold print out of the middle, that is what is in the, both the personnel policy and the contract. An employee who resigns in good standing or retires shall receive 25% of accumulated sick leave at the date of resignation or retirement, and 100% after being employed by the town of Madison for 20 years or more.
Okay.
That's what it currently says.
So if you're going to, this is what you're talking about changing? The bold print?
Right, if the board were to consider one of those two options and the other option is scribbled down at the bottom, to change it to a stair step where you would either increase that percentage at the 5, 10, 15-year mark or the 10, 15-year mark.
Okay, so that right there, to me, seems it would be a benefit to an employee, a union employee, correct?
Again, I believe it would be a benefit to the staff if you offered an incentive not to have someone call out sick during the last couple of weeks of their.
Yeah, I understand all that, Ken. What I'm getting at is, if you're gonna change the personnel policy and mirror what you've got with the union, that's a union chip, that's a bargaining chip. You don't just kind of just pass that out there. Give it to them, right?
We're not discussing the union contract.
No, but I know, but you are. If you're gonna change the personnel policy, if you read like option 2, and you wanna treat everybody equally. But you are. That should go to the next negotiation, which comes up when? When is the contract?
2020, so 2 years.
No, okay, right off, okay. I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay.
I guess I would kind of agree with that. I don't know if this is gonna make that much of a difference to somebody not make that much of a difference on burdening the other people. I mean, if I'm there 9 years or 10 years, and I'm only gonna get 50%, I can take 2 days off a week, I'm probably still gonna do that.
Yeah.
But I would think that we'd let, as Mr. Elias said, let's wait for the next negotiations and see what happens. Would that be better, agreeable or reasonable to everybody? That's what I would say.
I'm just looking for a consensus, I don't need a motion.
Thank you.
Yeah, consensus, I think.
Yeah. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, what's your question?
What impact does it have to the town budget either way?
Well, if it pays, if the person takes the time as they go, we pay it out under a budgeted amount. Sometimes if a person has a large amount of sick time accumulated and they are a 20-year employee, and they don't take the time off, then the town has to take that out of another budgeted account.
Because with private industry, it expires after the end of each year, if you don't take it. And
Some of it carries forward, some of ours carry
yeah,
forward.
so ours keep coming forward, which could impact a town budget,
Right.
which isn't accounted for in the budget year after year.
But you also have a limit on how much you can carry forward. So you only have so much you can carry forward at any
I'm
time.
just worried about somebody impacting a town budget.
What's the maximum carry forward?
360.
360?
Vacation is 80.
Okay. Number 6, discuss removal of blight, 497 Main Street, 32 Naomi Avenue, and 21 Nathan Street.
So as the board knows, at a previous meeting, they authorized the town to go out to bid for a contractor to tear down and remove these buildings at 497 Main Street, 32 Naomi, and 21 Nathan Street. That work, as you're probably aware, has been completed, and we have paid the contractor for that. We've sent a bill to Alan Morales. He has since entered into a closing to sell that property up there by the high school, and I've talked with the closing attorney, Becky Cafer, and so she has assured me that she will send the town a check for all the back taxes and for the cost of the demolition for that property. So that's the status at 497 Main Street. At no time did that property ever become a property of the town. There was never a tax foreclosure on that property. Now, the other two the next property, 32 Naomi, did become the property of the town through a tax foreclosure this year. So I just need clarification from the board, because I believe we've talked about this, and I know that Glenn and Jeff and I have talked about this. This property on Naomi Avenue, now that the building's gone, it really opens up that area. That footprint of that building was very close to the road, and it was also close to the shores within shoreline zoning. Since the town owns it now, is it the consensus of the board that the town will continue to own that, rather than to put it out for bid at auction for somebody to sell it and possibly rebuild something there? The town could utilize it. It does help with the highway department as far as plowing snow, because currently there's very little places to put snow on Naomi Avenue.
I don't think,
It's not a very big.
I'm sorry.
Moody?
I don't know, you probably could ask Jeff or Glenn, for what that property there was worth and what the town is gonna invest in it and what you're gonna get out of it, it's probably more beneficial to leave it the way it is. And it's a lot more convenient down, it's pretty tight squeeze, and I wouldn't wanna drive one of those big plow trucks down that street to begin with, not talking about. It'd be very easy to take the end of that building off when it was there. And not only that, there's one heck of a tree there also, I think. But, I think I'd lean against the road, the highway department, in their feelings of, it'd be more convenient for those people plowing snow and stuff. If you left it the way it is right now, I don't think, we're gonna get rich on that little piece of property down there.
Jeff, what do you think?
Would be a good place to put snow in the winter, as Ron stated, that, there's not a lot of room down there. And I think it's a bad idea. I think it would work. And it's, less than an acre, isn't it?
It is.
Yes.
It is .16 acres.
Yeah, and the right-of-way is actually only a 20-foot right-of-way, so if he was to build in the shoreline zoning, so it'd be right next to the road. I would say we just keep it.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to keep 32 Naomi Avenue as town-owned property.
Just so you're
Any
aware, at
questions?
your next assessors meeting, I would recommend that you abate all the remaining taxes since you're not going to collect those. And that's total of about $3,300 worth of taxes.
Okay.
So that way the town doesn't keep carrying that.
All right. We have a motion and a second to keep 32 Naomi Avenue as a town-owned property. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
The other property is 21 Nathan Street on the way down to the boat landing. Those properties were owned by the Beckwiths, and their intention was to tear down those properties and put another building or rental property in there. After dealing with both Bob Dunphy and then Susan in code enforcement, they determined that that property is below the floodplain, and it would take about 6 to 8 feet of fill to get a property high enough so that it would be feasible. That was not financially viable to them. They were 1 year behind on their taxes. It was their intent just to let the property go back. Rather than waiting, the board determined to tear those properties down, knowing that this property would probably come back. So as such, instead of waiting for 2 years, they have deeded the property back over to the town. So that is something that if the town wants to retain that as town property, they can. If you wanted to sell it, you could, but you'd have to know that whoever bought that property would have to do substantial work to get it above the floodplain. So I just need to know what's your pleasure on 21 Maple Street.
Do you have any sense of if there was some value to the town owning that, what we could use it for? Is there something that, is there a need for parking down there? It's a little ways away from the boat landing, but,
Yeah. I know there's always talk of work of trail development through that area, so it may be good for parking if people wanted to come and hike or use their ATVs or that sort of thing.
I think we hang on to it for a little while and see what comes up. That would be my opinion. We got it, we hang on to it for a little while and see what comes up through that. Because I know, like you say, there is some discussions and trail development about that.
As it sets right now, you could park a boat and trailer on it.
It's pretty flat.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty flat.
They did a nice job.
Now that all those old buildings are in.
Yep, it's a nice job down
All right, we have a motion to keep 21 Naomi Avenue as town-owned property.
21 Nathan.
Nathan, I'm sorry, I get stuck on Naomi Avenue.
there. I didn't, but I will. I'll make that motion to keep it.
All right, I'll second it. I didn't think I heard a motion.
We have a motion and a second to keep 21 Nathan Street as town-owned property. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor? I spent a lot of time on Naomi Avenue, so that's why I keep saying that.
Stuff in your head.
Yeah. All right, number 7, review Somerset Community Television Channel 11 budget.
So in your packet, you should have a spreadsheet that outlines the budget. I will say that John Harlow has done a good job with his board. This budget is very similar to the last 3 years. A total to the towns of Madison, Skowhegan, and Anson of about $66,800. As the board is aware, we usually fund our portion through the money that we receive from Beeline Cable franchise fees. I've been watching and tracking the franchise fees over the last couple of years, and as you're probably aware, less and less people are subscribing to cable. So as those subscriber numbers go down, the franchise amounts that the towns receive goes down. So if our portion, which is about 30% of the budget, if our portion is $19,765, we're receiving about $18,500 in franchise fees, so there's a deficit of about $1,270 in this budget going forward. Tammy Carrier and I were talking the other day, and she noted that the deficit was about $1,500 for this year, the amount we took in franchise fees and the amount we paid out for Channel 11. So that deficit, that $1,200 to $1,500, comes out of taxpayer-funded budgets for community services. So I just want to make the board aware, because in the past, you always had plenty of franchise fees to cover the cost of Channel 11. And that has probably tipped about 2 years ago. So going forward, that delta may get wider and wider. Now, I don't know if the board, I looked into this, I don't know if the board necessarily needs to approve this budget or just accept this as information, because the Channel 11 board is made up of selectmen from all 3 towns, and they have the jurisdiction to approve the budget. I know in the past that the selectmen have approved the budget, other times they've just taken it as information, so you can
Maybe
do
accept
what you will.
May you accept it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we just accept it.
All right, looking for a motion to accept the Somerset Community TV, Channel 11, 2018-19 budget.
So move.
Second.
So a motion and a second to approve, or to accept the Somerset Community TV, Channel 11, 2018-19 budget. Any questions? All those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. All right, number 8, review emergency management plan.
Again, I didn't give you all 56 pages. I gave you the basic plan, which is about page 4 through page 8. And again, I'll just do a brief summary of this. If there's any questions, you can certainly ask. Essentially, the emergency operations plan outlines all the possible incidents and emergencies that the town could expect and appropriates the necessary action to those. Mark Leslie did a lot of work bringing this up to speed. Don French has done a lot of work adding information into this, and I appreciate the efforts they've put in. I sent out the whole package for the board to review, and I will say that Selectman Savage did a good job catching a couple other edits that have been corrected and put into the plan, so I appreciate that. Once this plan is accepted by the Board of Selectmen, then a copy goes to emergency management in the county, and a copy goes to the sheriff's office as well. So I'll be glad to entertain any questions that the board or anyone else might have.
Seeing no questions at this time, do we get a motion to accept the Madison, Maine Emergency Operations Plan?
So move.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the Madison, Maine Emergency Operations Plan. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. All right, we'll entertain Selectmen's concerns. Mr. Elias.
You can just get Mr. Moody.
Mr. Moody, I'm sorry.
You
Can't see him. Mr. Moody.
None for me, buddy.
Thank you.
None for me, Mr. Chairman.
Savage, Mr. Newsham?
We'll need another representative of this board to serve as an officer of AMS emergency. There's 82 officers on the AMS emergency board.
I think we have to go through them, all right?
Yeah,
We
but
have
I
to go,
just-
we have next.
I just wanted to bring it up because
So, for Mr. Savage,
Yep.
for your information, we all 5 of us serve on the ambulance board. And our first full meeting is
next one,
July, the last,
25th.
July
I think it's
25th.
the 25th.
I'm thinking maybe he ought to get his feet wet.
Yeah, I think so too.
New guy.
That's what I'm thinking.
So that's one of our, so at that meeting, there are 4 meetings a year before that, where the entire board meets together with Starks and Anson. And then we have an executive committee that meets every other week,
Executive committee meets once a month,
once a month, okay.
and the full board meets quarterly, and that is the 25th. The full board is
So
25th.
to have a full board meeting of the ambulance, we need 3 Madison people, 3 Madison selectmen, 3 Stark select, 3 Anson selectmen, and 2 Stark selectmen. So, okay, Mr. Duchamp, any more? Okay, I have none. Citizens' concerns. All right, seeing none, I'm looking for, yes, ma'am, sorry.
Sorry, I was going through. Bringing up just the animal ordinance thing, I guess my biggest concern, I know I don't live in town, but I know that I guess my thought would be is how are you planning on policing this? As far as, is there gonna be a committee set where grievances can come to, or is it just up to one person, like the animal control officer, to oversee this? And how are we gonna keep it neutral? That it's not just a personal vendetta of, I don't wanna hear the roosters, so I'm gonna complain, and then they have to get rid of all their animals. And so I guess, I don't know if other people feel this way, but I know I strongly would be against that and willing to be on a committee if said committee was going to be developed to kind of oversee grievances, I guess. Is what I'm saying.
I guess the board's thinking was, as far as enforcement goes, just like our property maintenance and other animal control issues, they're followed up on a complaint basis. And so this one kind of falls into both categories. If it was a specific animal on the loose, that's so dangerous animal sort of thing, that would be animal control. If it was an odor or noise nuisance or a building that was too close to the property line, that would be a code enforcement issue. So I think that we'll gladly take any input on how we go forward in enforcing that.
How are you, I mean, as far as, let's say if something was already in existence, there's no like clause for grandfathering anything in, I guess that's my concern too, is, I mean, people have had livestock on their property for years with no issues. I know that they're gonna be under the same issues now, or just say, guidelines of, my animals are too close, or all of a sudden my building's too close, and someone says, oh, well, your building's too close, it needs to be moved or needs to be taken down, when it's been there for 45 years.
I think as far as the buildings go, I think that's addressed in the language of the ordinance, that the buildings are grandfathered. I think one of the things the board wanted to be careful not to do was to grandfather in nuisances. And so I think that's why they wanted to be careful about that. But again, that's language that we'll be glad to discuss.
I think that's what the meeting with the lady from the Farm Bureau is gonna bring about. And grandfathering might be part of it. Yes.
Now, along that whole same lines with, those that don't live right in town, Madison, Lakewood, East Madison, all the outskirts, is included in this ordinance as under that 1.5 acres. Okay, so if I live here in East Madison and I have 1 acre, so you're telling me that I'm not gonna be able to have critters? That's not cool. Plain and simple, that's not cool. Because if I live on a 1 acre lot and I've got somebody that lives next door to me that has 50 acres, but his house is like on the other side of his 50 acres, so therefore my animals aren't a nuisance, or your classification of a nuisance, how are you gonna address that?
We'll be glad to talk with the lady from the Farm Bureau. In order to have an ordinance that means anything, you have to have some numbers. You can't just say you can't have too many chickens, because too many chickens.
That's what it sounds like you're saying.
But
That's
let-
exactly how I'm reading it.
And let me finish. We put numbers in there, 12 chickens for an acre or less, an acre or more, there's no limitation on the chickens. The 1.5 acres, you had to pick a number. So that's why ordinances have to have numbers, and
So let me ask you this, did you go to the state 90 days prior to passing this, voting for this? Because not one person that I've spoken to in town even knew that this ordinance was being voted on.
And I can address that, but I don't know if I'll ever be able to satisfy everybody in that. We looked into this, and I'll check with the Maine Farm Bureau on this. Because it wasn't a zoning ordinance, I don't know if those 90-day requirements.
Those 90-day requirements are required.
So, even so, we were not aware, because we were not building this as a zoning or farming ordinance, we were dealing with it as a property maintenance ordinance. And I'll just say, this was discussed 13 times over 3 years at selectmen's meetings. I know not everybody gets to go out to selectmen's meetings, but they are public meetings. Every year, we have a town meeting on the second Monday of June. And we posted the information on all the ordinance changes in the town meeting, or in the town office, on our website, and we even promoted it on the local cable access, which got promoted on Facebook.
Then you just got done saying that nobody's even subscribing to cable, so I don't get Channel 11.
but maybe you participate in Facebook, and I know that the video was shared quite often on Facebook as well. So we're not gonna be able to satisfy everybody in this, but I think we can safely say this is not something we came up with in May and brought to town meeting in June. We've worked on this for 3 years.
I have a question. When you have that meeting with Julie on the main farm thing, is it gonna only be her, or can it be the residents that it affects?
I think my conversations with Julie over the phone would be at the very beginning, since she, I believe, has had an opportunity to meet with several of you. It would be just her and I at the beginning, and then if we wanted to open it up to a committee or to have more input, then we'd certainly be willing to do that.
Yes.
So if the town did notify the state prior to 90 days before the election, isn't this invalid?
I don't know, and that's something that Julie with the Farm Bureau and I will have to look
Then
into.
what's gonna happen between July 1st and we figure out?
It would be similar to whether, I would say it would be similar if we didn't get any complaints. And even if we did get a complaint in that time period between now and whatever changes are made, we would simply say, well, we're not going to enforce it because we're not sure of the validity of it. So we can't unravel it because we have a town meeting form of government, and it was passed at town meeting. So any amendments that we make to it will either have to wait till next June, or we'd have to get a quorum of 50 people to attend a special town meeting.
Right.
So,
I have another question. If this is supposedly in effect July 1st of this year, which by what I read it is, are you gonna give someone a certain amount of time to move their animals off their property before they start getting fined, or?
no, like I was mentioning to Mr. Cowan, it would just simply not be enforced.
Okay. I'm just curious, because eventually I am gonna get my animals off my property, but I'm just gonna need more time before July, more than July 1st, if I mean.
Understood. And, you know, if complaints come in, we would just have to deal with the folks that are making the complaint and just let them know that this is a work in progress.
All right, any other questions? Yes.
I just wanted to ask like where the numbers came from for the 12 chickens on 1 acre.
We looked at several other towns' ordinances, and there are literally hundreds of other towns that have similar ordinances to this. And by looking at those other ordinances, we determined that, okay, that seems to be a reasonable number, and it was reasonable to the members of the board and the people that did attend any public hearings. But again, like I said earlier, it's important to have a number to start with. You just can't say too many.
Sorry, I got another question. If a, what you wanna call backyard farm, I'm wording it that way, because that's the way it was worded on the article I read, is been getting inspected through the USDA and everything is fine and sanitary, is that gonna be okay for them be okay for those animals to still stay in town, even if it's an acre and a half or less a lot?
Again, these are many of the good things that we'll be talking about with the Maine Farm Bureau. But remember, this is a nuisance ordinance. So even if you have one animal, but that animal may cause some sort of nuisance by sight or smell or sound, that would kind of fall under our property maintenance ordinances.
Even if, like, the USDA inspector has come up and found that there is no sanitary issue or no odor issue or anything?
I don't know the answer.
Okay, I was just curious on that.
That's a good point.
Because I have, because I'm telling you, I've been with the USDA, and we have been for the last 3 years, inspected twice a year from him, and I have the paperwork at home. There's no issue with sanitary, no issue with smell, no issue with nothing on our property. I just didn't know how that was gonna work on that, if that's something that's gonna have to come from the Maine Farm Bureau, or what?
We'll have to look into it, yeah.
Okay.
All right, looking for a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries, we are adjourned at 7:29. Thank you.